All right, welcome to the Cool Wholesaling Podcast. I'm Jasper Cool here with my dad, Mark Cool. And on this podcast, we share real world insights, tools, and strategies to help you succeed in your real estate investing business. Each week, you'll get our perspectives from our two real estate investing businesses in North Carolina, what it's like to be in the trenches day to day and closing deals. We cover wholesaling houses, vacant land, building a real estate investing business, and more. So today we're going to be diving into dispositions. Both of us are just going to share our kind of process and tips and tricks for getting deals sold. And after that, we'll dive into deal breakdowns from closed deal. Each of us will break down from the past week and then also share kind of other things that happened in this past week in business to hopefully help you in your real estate investing journey. And yeah, after that, we usually dive into tools and softwares and strategies, and we'll wrap it up after that. So we're just going to jump right into it with the dispositions conversation. So I usually make you kick it off, so I can jump off today, and I'll just go over kind of our process, kind of from a high level view, and then I can dive a little bit deeper, but we don't want to make it too long. So I'll just try to run for maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'll switch it over to you. And then
Sounds good.
if people like the conversation, feel free to drop a comment or questions, and we can always go deeper in a future episode. So I'll just jump right into it. So for our disposition process, one of the things that helps keep it kind of streamlined is just working in Podio. As we've shared before, my dad and I, we both use Podio. I really like it. It's very customizable, but you don't have to use that. You can use whatever you like. But I definitely recommend, especially for selling deals, to definitely have some sort of CRM that you've got because it really helps to stay organized. Especially with selling deals, you got buyers coming in from all directions, offers coming in, and a lot of notes that you need to keep track of. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would definitely recommend getting a CRM set up if you don't have it already. And then for us, what we do is every time we get a property under contract, typically we're working with houses. So our first step is kind of on the transaction side, but that's to get all the information, which is just most of this information we get from the seller. So like, is what utilities is on city or is it well and septic? And then we'll get some of that more information from the county, like the bedroom, bathrooms, and everything. We'll just confirm all that stuff. And then we'll get pictures. So we like to get at least anywhere from 40 to 50 pictures of the property, interior and exterior. And that's very important. So I want to highlight that because I could actually share this with you. Maybe after the show, we could drop it in the show notes or something. But I do have a photo checklist. So
Yeah.
nowadays we kind of work with the repeat people to get our pictures, so we don't send it to them every time. But if you're working with someone you've never worked before to send pictures, I could share this checklist and we could just drop it in the show notes. But it just shows exactly what we're looking for, and it's basically just all the basic stuff. But if you live in a state like maybe Arizona, for example, that has pools, you want to make sure you get a picture of the pool, but also all the pool equipment that's behind the wall sometimes. So you want to get a picture of the pool filter and all that other stuff. For example, in North Carolina, what we have a lot is crawl spaces. So you want to make sure they always get a picture of the crawl space, a couple pictures of the crawl space, ideally, so you can see what the insulation looks like, see if there's like if there's a vapor barrier or not, because if there's not, a lot of times there's standing water down there. You want to see what the piers and joists looks like, everything like that. And then if it does have well and septic, you want to get a photo of both of those things. And then if it has HVAC, you always want to get a photo of that. And you want to instruct your photographer to take a picture of up close of the serial number, because if the seller doesn't know the age of the HVAC, if you take that serial number and you can plug it in online, it'll tell you the age of that HVAC. So that's really helpful when you're marketing the property to just know that information.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is kind of all basic stuff. Just get a picture of every single room in the house, get a picture of the exterior from every single angle, so you can kind of see the roof line from every angle, see the siding, see all the yard and everything like that. And then also make sure to get some photos of the kind of surrounding properties. You want to get a photo of what across the street looks like, sideways, like everything. So you can kind of just give buyers a picture of the property, and neighborhood is definitely part of the property. So yeah, I won't go too deep there, but just wanted to mention some of the main things. And
Yeah. Those are some good points, especially the HVAC serial number one. That's a really good point because that's a big negotiating piece, a large dollar
yeah,
negotiating piece is the HVAC and the age of it.
yeah,
The
because if you have it,
foundation, roof, HVAC, right? These major big ticket items.
exactly. Yeah, because if you have an HVAC that's newer, that's a lot of money the buyer's saving, right? As soon as they buy it, they don't have to replace that. So that's a negotiating point for you. And then another thing I didn't mention is the water heater. You want to make sure you get a picture of that. Sometimes in a closet, sometimes in an attic, kind of depends, but you definitely want to make sure you get a picture of that as well. And same thing, typically it's right there with a huge sticker on it, like when it was manufactured or when it was installed, and then you can share that information as well. But after you get the pictures, then as soon as we get the pictures, we move it to, dispositions, so working on selling the deal. And so we have a process in our Podio, which is kind of just like a checklist. And so I'll just run through it real quick and then I'll go a bit deeper. But first things first, what we do is we reach out to our VIP buyers. And so we kind of are updating that on a monthly basis based on, who we've done repeat business with and who continues to do good business. Because sometimes, I'll be honest, buyers can fall off that list because they might have been a VIP in the past, but maybe let's say they backed out on a deal on us and we really don't like when buyers back out on us. That's immediate removal from VIP, regardless of the
Or
reason.
they're just a jerk. We just closed one with somebody who was just being a jerk the whole time.
Yeah. And so sometimes when you give buyers that VIP treatment, they might take it and run the wrong way with it. So you got to really just kind of groom that list. And I like to keep it tight. So we like to keep it to probably maximum of 25 people. Somewhere between 15 and 25, I would say, is a good range. And with those people, like I said, you're kind of giving them the VIP treatment and reaching out to them first, whether that's with a phone call or a text message, and just letting them know, hey, you are one of our VIP buyers. We just got a deal in an area that I know you like. Wanted to give you first look at it. Just a heads up, though, you want to kind of implement scarcity. Just a heads up, we are going to be marketing this deal, later today. Just want to give you first look at it. So please get back to me ASAP, if it's something you want to take a look at. So that's what we do first, send it out to all of our VIPs. And like I said, right now, I think we're at 22. So that's not going to take you too long. But that's what we do first. And we usually give them anywhere between like 1 to 2 hours of kind of a runway there. If they get back to us right away, they're at asking price or sometimes even above. Then we'll just go ahead and sell it to them, because the reason they're on that list is because we've worked with them in the past. We know it's going to be a smooth closing and they're not going to back out, most times. So we just like working with those people. And another thing I would say is that if you're sending your deal out to a bunch of buyers, that adds risk into the process, because then some of those buyers could be wholesalers and then you might lose your deal. So when you're sending it to your VIP buyers, it's like I said, it's only 20 people and you trust them, you've worked with them before, they're not going to snake your deal. And so it kind of eliminates a lot of that risk up front if you're able to sell it to those people. Now, that being said, you probably can get more money sometimes when you send out a full blast and you kind of bid up the property, sometimes. So we definitely want to do that when we can. But a lot of times I might miss out on like $5,000, for example, but I know it's a guaranteed sure sale. No one's reaching out to my seller, and that's worth it sometimes. So yeah, but I won't go belabor the point. So after we do that, we send out what do you say?
I said it's a great point.
No.
The minimizing of risk is worth, your peace of mind is worth a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And so after we reach out to those people, then what we do next is we actually, it's kind of a two-step process. So we go on investor base and we're not contacting these buyers just yet, but we're going on there. And especially if there's a market where we're not as familiar with, we're going on there and we're doing kind of a broad search on there. And investor base we've shared before, but it's a paid tool. It's $250 a month. It's really good for dispo and for acquisitions, but just wanted to share that it is a paid tool. So we go on there, we plug in a 5-mile radius and a 1-year sold date. So this is buyers that have bought within 5 miles in the last year. And we just download all the buyers. And so what we do from there is we import all those buyers that we just downloaded into our texting platform. And that allows us to reach out to possible new buyers that we've never, reached out to before, because investor base has introduced us to a lot of new people. So that's awesome. So we do that before we send out our text blast, just in case there's any buyers in that area that we have never worked with before, and we'll add them onto our text list. Then once we do that, we send out a text blast to all the buyers in the county. So we have our text software, divided into groups by every county that we work in. And so whatever county the property's in, we're obviously going to send it to that group. We're also going to include our VIP buyers. That's a separate group. And then we're going to include all the neighboring counties. So if we have a property in Cumberland County, for example, we're sending it to like Johnston, Lee County, Hope County, like all the counties that are kind of neighboring, just in case, because some buyers only want to stay in one county, but some buyers might look at something that's 30, 60 minutes away from them, So we kind of just send in a radius of that one county text blast out. And then from there, we're typically seeing like a 10% response rate there, which is pretty good. And so if we're sending out to 1,000 buyers, for example, we'll get 100 replies back. And that's pretty good. And all those people aren't going to give us offers. I would probably say it's like 10% reply and then 10% give us offers, so that's kind of where we're at. But we get a bunch of replies from that. What did you say something?
Are you doing the investor-based buyers lumped in with your existing buyer list, or you're doing a sequence of VIP, then investor-based, then your full list?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, we do the VIPs first, and then we export those investor-based buyers in that area, text blast them. So we do include them with that regular blast. And then after we send out this text blast, we usually like send out the blast and kind of wait and go to investor base because a lot of replies are filtering in. So if you're just sitting there, it's going to be kind of overwhelming. So we usually wait like 30 minutes to 60 minutes, just wait for everyone to actually, read the message and respond. And then during that time, we like to actually go back to investor base, but do a tightened search this time. So I did 5 miles just to get everyone who maybe we haven't worked with before, especially if this is a new county for us. And that'll get all the people that have bought within 5 miles. But then when we go back and actually want to manually contact these people, like call them up, we go back to 1 mile. So we'll do 1 mile radius in 1 year, and then we'll call through all those people. If you do 1 mile, it's typically between 20, 30 people. So you can knock that out in probably 30 minutes or so. Just want to call through them and just see if they're interested in your deal, and you can text them the information or email it to them. So we'll do that, the manual approach with investor base, and then we'll go back, reply to all the easy texts. And honestly, at that point, typically our deal is sold by then. But if it's not, then we move on to the next step. So next steps for us is this is kind of when we might have like a colder deal that still hasn't sold, because typically, I'll be honest, like typically most of our deals sell to VIPs. Then if they don't, they typically sell on the text blast. And then if they don't, they typically sell to these investor-based buyers. So those first three steps are usually we're selling the deal if it's a good deal. Now, if it's maybe not a great deal, then we might have to go on to these next steps. So I'll just kind of run through these more quickly.
And when it's not a great deal, you mean it's overpriced, or it's a bad neighborhood, or the house is really bad, or all the above?
Yeah, probably all the above. Yeah. But I would say usually like when we get pictures back, I didn't mention this, but when we get pictures back, I'm reviewing them myself first before I even send it to Dispo, because sometimes we get pictures back and the seller either lied or they just haven't been to the property in years and they just didn't know. And so if we get pictures back and it's like way rougher than we anticipated, I won't even send it to Dispo yet. I'll just go ahead and try to get a price reduction first so that we don't waste our buyers' time. But yeah, if I think it's a good deal and then buyers don't, and that's another thing that does happen for sure from time to time. And so then in that case, what we're going for, if they're not like super interested in the deal, what we're going for is we're just going through everyone who responded and just asking them this question, like what price would make this a deal for you? So we ask every single person who replied, we ask them that question, and hopefully we'll get offers. That way we can go back and get a price reduction. Because when you are marketing a property and trying to sell a property, I would never recommend going back for a price reduction until you have at least 3 solid offers in your back pocket, because you want to make sure you're going to do right by that seller, essentially. Because if you're going back for a price reduction, that's already a difficult thing for you and for the seller. And so you don't want to be put in a position where you have to go back again after you got a first price reduction.
You want to randomly get a dollar amount from them. You want to know that you can, if you're going to, that makes sense.
Exactly. And so the reason I say 3 is because some of those buyers might just change their mind. Like sometimes it takes
they do, and they will.
Sometimes it might take you
said 100,000. Oh no, now I can only do 80,000.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's very frustrating, but it definitely happens. So the reason why I say 3 is because some of those buyers might change your mind, and that way at least usually one of those people will not change their mind if 2 of them drop off. And so what I would say is, let's say you're marketing property for 100,000, for example. All of your all of your offers are coming in lower. But let's say you got 3 offers and one is for 90, one is for 80, one is for 85. What I would recommend is just going worst case scenario and going off the 80, just in case those other buyers back out. And so if you're going back for a price reduction, I'd recommend going under 80. That way, if the other 2 higher buyers are like, oh, never mind, I can only offer 80, for example, then you're still covered. So I would recommend getting at least 3 and then going for a reduction based on your lowest offer so that you're definitely going to be safe. But anyways, that was kind of a tangent. So I'll just finish through this and then I'll turn it over to you. So after those first 3 steps, number 4, we post in North Carolina Facebook groups. So all the counties and cities that are nearby will just post a deal in there. When you're doing that, definitely do not post the address, but just post the basic specs like bedrooms, bathrooms, a couple pictures of the property, maybe some comps, maybe your ARV and your asking price, and then just ask people to message you. So we'll do that next. And then number 5, we reach out to all the realtors who have sold listings nearby. And typically that's just going to be the properties that we already comped. So all the properties that we used as like flip comps would typically just reach out to all those realtors who represented who listed the property, because typically they were the one representing the flipper. And then we'll just ask them if they know anyone who's interested to buy. And then next step, reaching out to the neighbors. It doesn't always work as well with houses, but it still can work. So we reach out to all the neighbors. That works very well for land. So I got that from you. And then next after that, we'll pretty much move to the price reduction piece. So those are all of our steps to try to sell the deal. If it's still not getting sold, then we'll move to the price reduction piece, which I just touched on. And then last step, if we get the price reduction, we just circle all the way back to step number one and let everyone know we got a new price and we started all over again. So
Yeah.
that was a long segment, but I'll turn it over to you now.
Well, yeah, but I don't think you should worry about it being long because I think you shared a lot of gold there. I mean, you just shared a really solid process that's proven, and you're closing however many deals. What's your average close deal? Like 50 or 60 now?
Yeah, I mean, the last few years we closed. I think last year we were right under 60, but before that we were close 66, and so yeah, around 60 deals a
Yeah.
year.
So this is a proven process that's closed 60 deals a year. This has been established through experience and trial and error. So it's not too much time. It's solid gold for anybody who's trying to build a better process or learn how to build a dispo process. And I'm sure if anybody's listening and they're serious about it, they probably want to know more. But I think it's a great outline and really clear and concise. So thanks for sharing that.
Well,
You'll
thank
probably
you.
find mine will be less so.
That's all right.
Uh, But yeah, I mean, we specialize in land, as we've talked about many times on this podcast. We do houses. Coincidentally, this week we closed 2 house deals, but I
Oh,
think they've been
awesome.
about 10% of our closed deals over the last few years. We are ramping up for houses again this year. We'll start doing more of those, and we do some subject twos, which are always houses. But so most of what I'll share will be primarily for land and how we do that. And it's very similar to what Jasper's talking about. I just tried to pull up our documents just to see. And the other thing about my sharing is that I think Jasper is more involved in his disposition process than I am in ours.
Definitely. Yeah.
I'm not really very involved in our disposition process anymore. I meet with the disposition team once a week and I talk about which properties we have in dispo and what the status of them is, what our marketing strategies are, whether we need to try and get a price reduction, et cetera, et cetera. That's really my biggest involvement. And then, if they need help or support, I obviously offer feedback and stuff, but I don't do much dispo. I don't ever talk to buyers. And so that I'm just prefacing it with that. So, and I'm trying to see if I should go off one of our documents here, if they're up to date, or if I'm just going to just go off the cuff with it.
Either way is fine.
What we do in our business when we get a property in is we have a two-stage what we call post-contract review. So the first thing that happens once we get a property under contract is the acquisitions team reviews it and double checks the deed and some other facets of the deal just to make sure we haven't missed anything before we send it to dispo, so we're not wasting time. So we try and check make sure that the deed matches. We don't always do that during the acquisitions process. There are a few different checklist things, items that we do in the acquisitions post-contract review. I didn't pull up that document, but it's like Jasper said, we have sort of a checklist for acquisitions once they get a contract, and then for disposition once the contract gets into the dispo realm. Let's see, acquisitions PCR. I wonder if I can pull it up quickly. No, I'm not going to be able to grab it quickly, so I won't worry about getting into detail on that. So then it goes over to Dispo, and uh, we do a little bit of work there on that side too. We check with the county if we're dealing with land. We check with the county, see if there's a perk test on file already. If the seller hasn't given us one in the acquisitions process, if there's a perk test, generally we'll ask if the seller tells us there's a perk test, we'll ask for a copy of it. If they don't have a copy of it, either acquisitions will look for that and send it over to Dispo, or Dispo will try and pull it up and then also ask our Dispo team will research the property, make sure the zoning is correct, make sure the setbacks are good, that we can actually build something there before we're going to send it out to a builder. We don't want, just to look unprofessional and send something out and then have the builder come back and go, the setbacks over here don't allow for this, or there's whatever else. The other thing we do in Dispo as part of our post-contract review is we check on the liens, and you can reach out to the county and ask them for any liens that would be on the property, like tax liens or liens from like when they put a lien on there when the city or the county has to clean up trash or garbage, anything like that. You can get that stuff from the county. We check into that because that's going to affect our asking price, because if we either have to go back to the seller and get them to agree to pay that, or we have to build that into our price. But I guess part of the post-contract review and acquisitions too is any back taxes, which happens usually when we're making our offer, because we generally include that in our offer. But anyway, all these things are considerations. We try and really get our ducks in a row before we send this out to any buyers.
Yeah.
with a piece of vacant land. And then, um, yeah, and even if it's a urban location and you're dealing with water and sewer rather than a well and septic on a piece of land, we will find out the tap cost, from the county. We'll say, what's it cost to connect taps here if it doesn't already have taps on the vacant lot, and that's just where the city installs a connection to their water and sewer. And if the lot doesn't have that, those cost anywhere between 1,500 and 4,000 in my experience per tap. So it can
Hmm.
really affect the buyer's experience when they go, well, in this county, the taps cost 4K each, so I can't pay that for it. So we
Yeah.
try and get all that information up front. Um, and then as far as our, let's see, we determine our asking price after we get all our information. We create a flyer. Um, and then we do a similar thing to what Jasper does. We reach out to VIP buyers, and a lot of our deals are almost pre-sold. Like when we know we have a lot and we're going to get it under contract, we often reach out to our VIPs and price check them, which
Yeah.
is a little bit risky because if you price check with a VIP and then the seller falls out for some reason, then it can discredit you with the buyer. But we do sometimes when we're really close with a seller and they're pushing for a higher price and we're not sure if we can go that high, we will go to a VIP and be like, hey, we know you're buying in this area. What would you think of this lot? Could you pay this? And if they say yes, then we know we can lock down the seller. But even
Hmm.
so, then similar to you, Jasper, we'll just reach out to our VIPs first, and a lot of these we know they're going to go for, and often they're going to go for it at asking price. So if we get that, then the property's sold, as you said, and if not, then we go through a marketing process, which is similar to what you're talking about. We're using investor base in our buyer list first. Investor base, sometimes we scrape prop stream for buyers too, but not as much since we have investor base. That's just better. Um, and again, Jasper said it's a paid tool, so you can scrape buyers in an area using prop stream or prop wire, which are prop stream costs money too. Prop wire doesn't, but you can go into prop wire and find recent solds. You can go into Zillow and find recent solds and scrape for buyers. As Jasper mentioned, you can find agents who have worked with buyers, all these things you can do for free. But yeah, we
Hmm.
do the investor base, and then we send out neighbor letters, as Jasper mentioned. But that's we usually send those out right away because they take a week to get out there. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a fallback. If we haven't sold to a VIP or investor base by that time, the letters have hit the neighbors, and occasionally we sell these vacant lots to the neighbor. And it's fairly often. It's pretty surprising how often. Like there's a handful of deals every year that we sell to neighbors. Probably like 5 last year out of 44 closed deals. So it's a pretty good percentage of neighbors that will buy it. And that's just a letter that says, hey, neighbor, we just got this property next door to you or across from you or behind you, whatever. And we're getting ready to sell it. Just wanted to give you first crack at it. Give us a call if you're interested. That's the basic letter you send out. Um, but yeah, and then our fallbacks, if none of these things work, the VIPs, the investor base, our buyer list. And I think the reason I asked you that, Jasper, is because we'll tend to go VIP investor based buyers who tend to be really high quality, and we're still building relationships with some of these people, and then the general mailing list because of the risk that you're talking about with, like, we don't know everybody on our mailing list is good and totally
Yeah.
trustworthy. We just don't. So I trust investor based buyers more than I trust our mailing list at large because
Yeah.
you know, I don't know who's on there 100%. So
That's a good
that's
point.
we do it in 3 stages, and then after that, if we're not getting anything, then it's exposing yourself to a little bit more risk, going out there on Facebook groups, Facebook Marketplace. We post properties on. We use Craigslist, and you can post to Zillow too. It's a little bit more work because you have to post, and then they call you and verify and all this stuff. It's kind of a last resort because it's a hassle, but we do that. In some cases, when the property is in a more high trafficked area, again, talking about land, but you can do this on houses, we might put a bandit sign right in the yard for sale, with our phone number. That's opens you up to more risk too, because you've got real estate agents and other things like Jasper shared last week, where he had a real estate agent snake his deal.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and then agents, we already mentioned agents, but you can reach out to agents who seem to be very active in the area. You can determine activity from Zillow, just looking at solds in the area and see which agent names pop up most frequently, reach out to them, see which agents are active on Facebook groups in the area, reach out to them, anybody who's buying in this area, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's generally it, and that's like I said, I did it mainly for land, just skewed toward land because Jasper already covered everything he does for houses, but they're a very similar process. Did I did I miss anything? Did I leave anything out there?
I think that was great for me. It's cool to see how many deals you sold to the neighbors. That's really cool. I remember when you first told me about that.
Yeah, I'll have to go through and pull up a number on that, but I'm always surprised every time I look back and go, "Wow, we sold, 4 or 5 deals to the neighbors last year." Peop
Yeah.
and it's an easy sale, right? Because 'Cause they're like they know the lot, they know the neighborhood, they know how much they're willing to pay, and if it's within your price range that you wanna sell it for, then it's kind of a slam dunk, so
Yeah.
it's nice when that happens. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, yeah, I think that was a great breakdown. So, I mean, if anyone wants us to dive deeper, we definitely can. And another thing I like that you mentioned was some of the free ways that you can find buyers. So, if someone's interested, we could also do a segment, maybe next podcast or in the future, about all the free ways you can find buyers. Because I think
Mhm.
everything that we both mentioned, I mean, except for you, well, you mentioned some good free strategies, but I think everything I mentioned was using paid tools like texting software is paid, investor base is paid. So we could dive into a way to sell your deals for free because it's definitely can be done. So yeah, but I hope everyone enjoyed that segment. So we're gonna jump into deal breakdowns, where we both break down a closed deal from the past week and ups and downs of that. So you want to jump in with yours?
Yeah. Yeah, I made some notes on one of the deals we closed this week. We closed 2 this week,
Awesome.
and they're both houses, as I mentioned. And
Yeah,
this
that's
one
great.
that I'll break down is a house, shoot, I don't have the beds and baths and stuff, but anyway, it's a house that was occupied, and it was occupied by the guy that we're dealing with is the son of the woman who's living there, who is on the title, but he who's had a power of attorney. So it's that kind of situation. So
Mm,
when you're dealing with a house with somebody in it, it's always a little bit of a red flag right off the bat. So 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 1,232 square feet,
nice.
and in Harnett County, North Carolina. So built in 1994. So pretty good, when we're talking about parameters like you talked about last week, Jasper, pretty good
Mm,
deal overall. Our biggest challenge with this deal is that we contracted it too high, and that
yeah.
made it a really difficult deal. The second biggest challenge was having the basically the guy we were dealing with, we'll call him the seller, having his mother in the property, his elderly mother in the property, and having to schedule something with him anytime somebody wanted to see it. And sort of like this is another one where you deal with some risk there because you've got he wanted to be over there because it's his mother. So like anytime somebody's going over there, it's him and his mother and then a potential buyer, and then we're saying we're doing an inspection or whatever, and we have to tell the buyer like, hey, just tell me your inspector, like that whole thing. It's just not
Yeah.
it's a rough situation. So we didn't do a lot of showings. We're trying to sell it on photos only, and we did get offers on photos only, but we contracted this thing for 125. And our offers, I made a note of our offers. We had 7 offers on this, and all of them, it goes to what you were just talking about, Jasper. Our offers ranged from 75K to 110K.
Wow.
We have it under contract at 125.
Yeah.
So we kind of hung around with this. We got it under contract January 14th of this year, and we just closed it this past week. So we hung around trying to get a better offer. And what happens, I guess we haven't talked about this a ton, but when you've exhausted your buyer pool for professionals, for people who are flipping, or even people who want to be landlords, they still want to get it at a. So I was talking about landlords, like just trying to sell it to a landlord, right? And or a retail buyer, somebody who wants to like a handyman special. We had this thing below market, right? But not far enough below market for a flipper to want to touch it. And so yeah, so that was the biggest struggle with this is having it be overpriced, and then the secondary struggle was having somebody in there who we had to work around every time we wanted to show it. So we're trying to sell it on based on photos only, and it was a good house, like it was in good shape and everything, and built recently, as we talked about. So we were able to get a price reduction finally in March, but we waited too long, so that's kind of painful. You've got the seller going, when are we going to sell this? When are we going to close? When are we going to close? We're trying, we're working on it. We got some issues, and then finally we have to go. Hey, we either need to cancel this or we need to do it for a lower price. And thankfully, they agreed to do it for 100K. And our high, yeah, our highest offer had been 110. So we were just hoping we could get the 110 buyer to come in, which they didn't, And so then we're marketing again. And finally, one of our VIPs came through with somebody who wanted to do a handyman special. And we were able to sell it for 112.5, and we had it at 100.
Nice.
So, it was pulling a rabbit out of the hat thing, because we really thought we were going to have to just again tell the seller we couldn't do it after
Yeah.
they gave us a $25,000 price reduction. But thankfully, we were able to close with this buyer. The closing was pretty easy. There wasn't anything major with the title or any of that stuff. So by the time we sold it on March 18th, we closed on April 4th. So that's like 17 days. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah. And it was just for background, it was an SMS lead that came in. I didn't check when it came in, but we contracted it in January. And I think that's it, really. I think that's the synopsis of it. The
Well,
challenges
that's
were
great.
the overprice and the yeah, I already dealt with that. So anything else? Any questions about that one?
No, that's awesome. I mean, congratulations for selling it higher than what you had originally anticipated too. That's great.
Yeah, I think the lesson of it is just really do your underwriting really conservatively, especially in today's market. We just need to be better at being conservative on our underwriting, and be okay with missing out on some deals, or potentially missing out on deals because you offered too low. Because offering high, we got lucky this time, and the seller went down 25K, and then we got lucky and we found a buyer where we could still make 12.5K, but there's some luck involved there.
Yeah.
There are other deals like this where you're way overpriced and you just lose the deal. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's it. We can switch over to you. You got a deal to break down?
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. And congratulations on that closing. That's a
Okay,
good one.
thanks.
Yeah. Starting off the month strong.
Yeah, we closed two this week. The other one was 17
That's
something.
great.
Yeah, for another
Starting off,
house.
starting off the month and the quarter strong. Maybe we should do some more houses.
Yeah. Well, those were supposed to close last month, so they really, in my mind, are for the first quarter.
Yeah.
'Cause they're just getting us back to break even. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's a blessing. I'm grateful. I'm grateful.
Definitely. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think which one I should share because I think it's probably more beneficial to share the more difficult closing deals. So
Probably.
that hopefully people can learn from that. I mean, we had one close this week, which is super smooth, and the other one not so much. So I'm gonna dive into that one. And so this one was I might have shared a story about this briefly in the past, like the contract story, but I'll just dive into everything. So basically, this was a referral lead, which was awesome. So this is a seller that we closed with back in 2023, and she referred her husband to us, so that was cool. But she referred him to us January 31st. So that's when this lead came into our system. And we negotiated with him for, a little bit. And he actually had higher offers, but his wife was like selling him for us, which was nice. And so yeah, so we contracted it the following week on February 5th, and we weren't the highest offer, but again, she kind of put in a good word for us, and we contracted with him. And then that's kind of where the problem started. So I thought that this was a good price, same as you. And I sent it out. I thought it was going to be like a home run deal for us. So we got under contract for 11,000, just sharing the numbers. And I marketed it for 31,000 because based on the comps that I found, I thought that it was going to be kind of a home run deal. And so I guess I'll share that with people too. So the comps that I was seeing, the flip comps were selling in the 100 to 120 range. And the kind of as is comps, the lowest one that was in comparable condition to mine, it was beat up from the tenants. The tenants had recently moved out, but it would take probably like 10 to 15,000 to make it, livable. And so it wasn't horrible, but it was definitely beat up a bit. And so, anyways, as is comps I was seeing were ranging from 50 to 70, and the flip comps from 100 to 120. So I was like 31, no brainer, right?
Yeah.
Totally was not the case. And so I learned a lot because, like I said, this is a market I've never done a deal in before. It's kind of bordering South Carolina, and it's just not a great market. Scotland County, I don't know if you've done deals there, but I probably wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah. I think we've tried, and it's pretty quiet over there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that exactly explains my deal. It's very quiet over there. So anyways, we did the usual process, which I just touched on. So we did everything in the process. And that's why I actually came up with that 5 mile radius, because I wanted to encompass all the buyers that might be buying in that area because I didn't know anyone out there. So we did that 5 mile radius thing, and we reached out to all the investor base. And in this case, I didn't narrow it down. I called every single buyer that was on that 5 mile radius that were buying, within 5 miles of this house. And it was pretty much just crickets. And so I did have a couple guys that were interested, and they were like, I'll get back to you. And it's interesting because at this price point in this market, I noticed that I'm not dealing with professional buyers here. It's more of the maybe Facebook Marketplace type buyers who are just doing this as a side hustle, trying to pick up a flip or a rental here and there. It's totally different than all the other markets I work in. So that was a good learning experience for me. But if this wasn't a referral, I wouldn't have taken the deal. We don't market there, obviously. So I just wanted to make it work because it was a referral. So anyways, we marketed this thing for, a while, probably 10 to 14 days, which is kind of a long time for us. Typically, we're selling deals within a day or two in the markets that we work in, and this was not that. So anyways, I marketed it for a long time and just really wasn't getting anything. I even had my friend, this is another thing I didn't touch on in the dispo process. So just real quick, after we go through all the steps that I mentioned on our end, what we'll do as a last resort before we do the price reduction is we'll reach out to one of my friends who has Investor Lift and he's a good friend of mine, and we'll ask him to post on there and also help us sell the deal. So JV, obviously. So that's another option. So I did that with him and still nothing. So I was like, man. And so during all this, we still actually didn't have keys to the property. So it was a good thing that we didn't have keys because we could it was kind of the ball was in their court kind of because we're like, hey, we're trying to complete inspection, but we need the keys. We had a lockbox already set up, but it's like, hey, we need the keys so we can complete our inspection. And so it kind of was like we were kind of waiting on them. They weren't waiting on us at this point because they still hadn't gotten over there with the keys. So anyways, that worked in our favor. It gave us a little bit of extra time there. But anyway, long story short, we ended up having to list the property on the market because we literally had no offers from these off-market buyers. In this case, I had no offers. So I didn't even have anything to go off of. I had a bunch of people that were like interested, but they just wouldn't pull the trigger because, like I said, they weren't those professional buyers. So they needed more like convincing and hand-holding and stuff. And I was trying, but it just wasn't working because
they didn't know how to calculate their numbers, maybe.
Yeah. And it's not a great property. It's 2 beds, a 1 bath, 672 square feet. It's a tiny little house. And it's right next to a train track. Like there's a railroad right next to it. So
wow.
it's not a great property. Like I said, this is a referral deal. I wouldn't have taken the deal if it wasn't, So anyways, we list on the market and the same price, we listed for 31 because I was like, all these other deals sold on market, like I said, 50 to 70. So I still thought this would have a chance. And it did not.
So you put it on Zillow, you mean? Or you put it on MLS?
We just listed on the MLS. So we talked to the sellers and we were just like, hey, this is what's going on. Are you guys fine with us listing on MLS? They were fine with it. And so we did that. And so they listed on MLS, and I think it goes on all the websites like Zillow and Redfin and all those websites. And so we went on there and it still really wasn't getting much action. And so I was still bummed out about it. And I think it was about 2 more weeks on market. So it was like a 30-day sales process. And again, that's kind of not in my wheelhouse because most of our deals just sell ASAP. So I was like kind of stressed out about this one. And anyways, long story short, we finally get an offer from this buyer, 17.5. And well, actually he came in at like 15. I got him up to 17.5. And once he came out to 75, I was like, okay, let's just do this thing. Obviously it's not a home run deal. It's $6,500.
Where did the buyer come from? MLS?
What's that?
Did the buyer come from MLS?
Yes. Yeah. So he came from MLS, and a bonus here, because it wouldn't have worked if this wasn't the case. A bonus was this dude was just like representing himself, and obviously, we're not realtors, and so we just did a deal direct, and because I did a flat fee listing, that's all I owed them. I didn't owe them a commission, and with the commission, it would not have worked. So thankfully, this was just a buyer who saw it, not like a buyer's agent who brought him, but just a buyer. And so we just did the deal direct. We actually didn't even sometimes we'll do a double closing when we list properties, but we actually didn't even do that this time because it's kind of a small spread anyways. And so what we did is I just explained to him the whole situation. And again, this was not like a professional buyer, very nice guy. He actually runs a landscaping business and he's a great guy, but he's not like super tech savvy and everything. And so I think I did share this story before about the sales process. So I won't dive into that, but he didn't have an email and everything like that. And so I'll fast forward, but we assigned the property to him instead of doing a double closing. So just an assignment agreement, and he sent in the EMD. And then we had a lot more problems because there are multiple title issues since this was an inherited property that the husband had inherited. And so there are multiple title issues. And then his brother, they thought his brother had all these court cases against him and it was a different person and all this stuff. I think I did share this last week, so I apologize, but I forgot until I got to this part of the story. But so I'll skip through all that. But we had another probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 week escrow where we were trying to close, but we couldn't. And he really needed to close this one because his mother had a couple properties he inherited, and one of them was in foreclosure, and this one was not. And so he was trying to sell this and take those funds immediately to pay off the other house.
Save it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he really wasn't even making any money on this himself, which is kind of sad. But so the good thing about it is that he was able to pay off the foreclosure with the proceeds, and also we gave the his wife the $1,000 referral fee because we told her we would, and so that was awesome. And then at the end of the day, we also paid the sellers. The seller had their own attorney because it was an estate, and so the attorney was administrator of the estate. And so we paid off their estate or whatever, estate attorney closing costs or whatever. So that was like $650. And then we paid a few other things. So all in all, I think we made like right under five on it.
Mm.
Um, Actually, no, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, it was. So 48.25 was our profit on it. So not a home run, but still made a profit. So
Yeah.
that was good. And we were able to get it closed. And the seller was super happy. And a great thing about it was that it was all worth it in the end because she left us a like glowing 5-star review. She was like, "This is not my first, my second time working with Bright Home Offer and all this stuff." And it was like a paragraph long. I was like, "Oh my gosh." And so that was really sweet. So it made it all worth it in the end. But from start to finish, we contracted this one on the 5th of February, and we close it just this week on the 4th. So about 60 days, about 2 months.
Yeah.
And so about 30 days of that was trying to sell the deal, and then about 30 days was trying to close the deal. So that was a deal story of mine for this week. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a
Yeah.
lot of twists and turns. Yeah. So I think for
Yeah.
me, the moral of it is the persistence and just doing what needs to be done and being creative too. Because sometimes in Dispo, I think since that's the theme of this podcast, is just like it can be easy to just kind of throw your hands up if your normal things don't work and just be like, oh, we're not going to sell
Yeah.
this. But like, can you go the extra mile? Can you get creative? Can you think of another way to do it? And like you said, you tried a lot of different things, and eventually the MLS worked. But once you get something under contract, it's a lot of work and a lot of time and money to get it under contract. So do everything you can do to try and get it sold.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I even thought of one thing that I didn't share in the dispo thing. So like I pulled out all the stops here. I did everything in the process. And then I tried to have a JV deal with one of my friends to help get it sold. Still didn't
Yeah,
work. So then I went to a part of our process that wasn't even included, which is listed on the MLS, because that's a very last resort for us. That's not a
yeah.
strategy for us. But yeah, we were able to get it done. So great advice. Definitely don't give up if it's not selling at first.
Did you try going to the big behemoth that we don't like to work with that much?
Yeah, they don't work in that market because it's
Yeah, I
so
figured.
small.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, so that was actually my first thing when I got a deal there because I was like, I know no one out here. It would be easier to just outsource it to them and I'll just move on to another deal. But they were like, nope. And I was like, awesome. So so yeah, if you are marketing in North Carolina, I would recommend steer clear of Scotland County. It's not a great buyer's market. So yeah.
yeah.
But
What's going on there?
yeah, not much going on. But if you do get a deal there, I think a better property would probably have sold a little bit faster. Like I shared, my property was 21672 square feet right next to a railroad track. So not an
Yeah,
ideal type of house. So
that's tough. Yeah.
yeah, so it was definitely a tough sell. But yeah, so those are our stories for the week. Hope everyone got some good takeaways from those. And next, we like to dive into tips, tools, and strategies. So it doesn't have to be exact tools or softwares or anything. It could be maybe anything that you picked up this week that was working for you, whether like in training people or finding new hires or something. I don't know. Anything like that you want to share?
I didn't make any notes on that. I made notes on victories and challenges. Do we not have that in our format anymore?
You're right. Yeah, let's do that. Let's dive into that instead.
I, to answer your question, no, I don't really have any tools. I guess I have to prepare more with that, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head. We just keep talking about Just Call and AI agents and stuff, and those are, we don't, but there's nothing going on there.
So
But yeah,
let's
I
jump
did
into
make
victories
notes
and
about
challenges.
victories and
We'll
challenges.
each share those and then we can wrap.
Okay. All right. Well, so I guess for me, I've got a bunch of them, and it was the end of the month and the end of the quarter. So, I've been making notes for the last week about stuff, but I'll try and keep it brief here. I guess, my biggest victory right now with the overall business is that we finally hired a new acquisitions closer, an acquisition specialist, which is something we've been trying to do for, a year, really, honestly. And we've hired 2 or 3 people that haven't worked out, and we've interviewed a dozen or more people, I'm sure. We've looked at probably 100 resumes, and we found somebody who is really good, and I'm really grateful for. So that's a big victory. And he got his first contract this week, which is also a victory. And he got his second, I think his second and third contract. We had 5 contracts this week. Yeah, so he locked
That's
down
huge.
3 of the 5 contracts we had this week.
Nice.
So that's a huge victory for the team. And just as a business, we had big momentum. Last month we got 15 contracts, and that was before our new guy started. I guess he had his first week was the last week of March, but my other acquisitions team member and I did 15 contracts in March. So that was a victory for that month. But then we started off this week with 5 more properties under contract. So
Yeah.
it's really great. It's a
That's
really great
awesome.
trend. Yeah. And we closed 2. That's a victory. I've already mentioned that, but we'd had a long drought. The last one we closed was like the first week in March or something like that. So it had been, a long drought, and we had been sort of behind the 8 ball with finance. I just want to be real in this podcast because we were we were struggling. We were over a barrel. Like it costs us a certain amount to run our business every month, and we were not hitting that with the first 3 months revenues. So it was very challenging. So it was like a huge rainstorm after a drought to get 2 closed deals and to make 30 grand this month or this
Yeah.
week.
That's huge.
So that's a victory. What else? Oh, yeah, I guess we sold 1 this week, so that's great, and then 6 for the month last month. So I have months and quarters and stuff in here mixed in. um I can mention one tool too. I see I have a tool mentioned here as a victory. I've mentioned it before, but I can touch on it. And then as far as challenges go, like I said, just being real with it is like, there are peaks and troughs in running a real estate business, right? And I just went through a huge trough where partly because of the acquisitions hire not working and us getting light on contracts and not having stuff to sell, but we've been in a real cash flow crunch for a while, and it's been really painful and caused me to, have to put personal money into the business, which I wouldn't think I would have to 5 years in, but that's been hard. So it's like it's not all glamour, and we don't want to just be here going like, oh, we closed 30K in deals or whatever. It's like it's been that just brought me back to break even this week. Now we're going to move forward from there, but we got a
Yeah.
bunch of deals ready to close. But that's the biggest challenge, really. I guess the other big challenge that I don't know, I think we've talked about this a little bit lately, but seller fallout has seemed to be a real epidemic for me lately. I don't know if it's the same for you, but it just seems like sellers less and less care about signing a contract. It just doesn't really
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
It's just like it's almost like when sellers used to take your offer and shop it to other buyers. Now they take your signed contract and shop it to other
Yeah.
buyers, and
Yeah.
then sign another contract. Like it just doesn't matter. I
Yeah.
think it's maybe because it's all virtual or something, but I've had a couple conversations with sellers lately where it's like, you do realize you signed a legally binding contract, right? Yeah, I don't care. I'm going to do this other
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
or are you a person of your word? Well, yeah, I mean, I'm going to go another way.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like it just doesn't matter. So it's really painful for me because it's just like nobody cares about giving their word and keeping their word anymore. I don't know if it's a symptom of the scroll universe that we all live in now, and everything's fast and past, and it doesn't matter, and
Yeah.
nothing's real, or what's going on. But it's just been really like I made a note here. I had 3 people this week do this, right? Just this week, I had one guy text me and say, things have changed for me. I think I'm going to go in a different direction, And I was supposed to meet him to pick up keys and put on a lockbox this week. I was
Yeah.
actually going to go over and meet the guy because it's not far from here. And then I had another one that actually got signed this week and then came back and went, oh, my daughters don't want to sign, or they don't want me to sign, and I'm not going to do it anymore. And then it's like, I think there were 3 this week. I think there was another one too. I mean, I shared a big story about how I had to renegotiate with somebody. Oh, the third one was I renegotiated a deal this week that we ended up giving a little bit more money because, I got another offer on the table, and, that whole conversation of like, are you going to keep your word with us, or are you just going to go for the other offer? Like, who are you? What do you do?
Yeah.
You know, but anyway, so I dealt with 3 of those this week, but I've dealt with like 5 in the last 3 weeks probably, and it just seems like an epidemic. And so like there are things we can do. We can try and tighten the process. We can try and be more rigorous with the in-person contract signings and emphasize the clause at the very bottom of our contract above the signature line that says you are signing a legally binding contract. If you're not certain about this, please consult an attorney. It says it right there, separate from all the other stuff, just so they
Mhm.
really get it. And like, so I think I just need to have me and the acquisitions team just go over with the people. Okay, let's go over every clause. Now you see this legal, this I don't know, like there's stuff like that we can do to try and reinforce it. But then I think there's also a piece of it where you just have to accept, like, I'm going to do some forensics on this week about what percentage of our canceled deals or our deals that didn't close were from seller fallout, and see
Yeah.
but it's a very high percentage. It's a very high percentage these days. So then it's just, there is a piece of acceptance of like, okay, well, I'm going to get 10 contracts and 5 or 6 of them are going to close if I'm lucky. That's
Mhm.
that's a tough reality to accept, but I think that's kind of where we are. I don't
Yeah.
know if you have anything else about that, but I think that's my biggest challenge, other than the roller coaster of drought and I think I'll wrap it up, but I think that a big piece of the financial challenge that I mentioned had to do with not putting a good person in place in the role that we just finally hired, and then also not me as a leader not recognizing when I needed to step in and put out the fire, and waiting too long for me to do that. Because once I stepped in last month, we got 15 contracts, and I really involved myself in that, and I was like, we're going to make this work until we get the right person in place. But if I had done that a month or two earlier, or if I had managed the guy who was in the role previously and not just trusted that he was going to do the job because he had a good resume and said he was going to do the job, if I had really been on top of him, we wouldn't have gotten in the bad position that we were in
Mhm.
financially. So those are the things I can take away from it. And hopefully, if you're in this position where you're building a business and you have people, I guess my takeaways would be, trust and verify, as Ronald Reagan said years ago. It's like, trust the person, but also verify that they're going to do what they say they're going to do, and that their resume matches their productivity, which I didn't do. I just wanted this off my plate, so I hired somebody, and I trusted that it was off my plate and they were going to handle it, and they didn't. And a lot of balls were dropped, and then we had a drought. The drought cycled through and hit us, whatever, February, March.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are my lessons and takeaways from that, and that's my victories and challenges.
That's a great share. I'm super excited for you for the new acquisition manager.
Yeah, I'm really pumped. He's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's also a really good, culture fit team guy. Just positive, upbeat, enjoyable to be around, which is really important to me too. Our business is virtual and we all work remotely and from home, but we still have team meetings, and we have a Slack thread that's very active, and we have department meetings, and it's just really important to have a positive culture. And that's, in addition to skill set, that's very important to me.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. Yeah. But yeah, I'll turn it over to you unless you have any other questions or feedback.
No, no, thanks for sharing. That's great.
Yeah.
So for me, I guess I'll start with challenges first. Uh, I had um I had a few challenges this week. I think first and foremost was just losing out on a good bit of revenue that I was kind of counting on. And it's a good thing to never count your revenue before it's into your bank account, because a lot of times I think a lot of gurus, especially, I really like your share of just being honest and transparent about the business, because I think a lot of gurus or online coaches or whatever. One of the metrics that I saw a lot in the wholesaling space, at least, is projected profit, and I think that's one of the worst things to ever measure. That is probably just, you shouldn't even track it. I don't. I just think it's the stupidest metric to ever track, but it looks very good to share on social media. Oh, I have $1 million in projected profit, but it's like
Yeah, I
that
have a bunch
doesn't.
of deals in escrow all the time. Yeah, are they
Yeah,
going to close?
it
Yeah.
means absolutely nothing. And so I share that to hopefully make you not track that, not waste your time tracking it, and don't get your hopes up on projected profit. But also just to know that if people are touting that on social media, that's number is not what's closing. So just to be transparent there. But the reason I share that is because this week we had two deals in particular where I'm not sure the exact dollar amount. I think it's around 25,000 just got wiped from our board. And that sucks. On
Yeah.
one of them, it was a property that I had bought and fixed it up a little bit, put on the market. I was super excited about it. I thought it was gonna be a home run, and we're still gonna make a good profit, hopefully. But the inspection report came back this week, as it does with retail buyers, and there were termites. And I didn't know there were termites. And so that's gonna cost me anywhere from 10 to 12,000 to fix it next week. And then not only that, but the entire septic pump needs to be replaced and pumped out and all that stuff. So that's like an additional 3 to 5,000 or something. And so pretty much I had to eat that. So I don't know what that is combined, but that was around 15,000. And then I had another deal this week where a judgment came back on title, and the judgment was double our contract price for the seller. So that was awesome. And on this deal, we were projected to make, I think, like 15,000 on it or something. And the judgment came back, like I said, double our contract price. Seller, of course, doesn't have the money to cover it, which we wouldn't expect her to. And we wouldn't expect the buyer to come up double his price, so we just pretty much ate that. And so that cut our profit down from 15 to, I think, like 4,000 or something, somewhere around there. So between those two, that was a bit of a sting. And
Yeah.
it's always a bummer.
That's a kick in the cojones right there.
Yeah. And the good news is on this land deal I just mentioned, we're going to close it on Monday. So at least we'll have a closing on Monday. But like I said, it went from 15 to I think around 4,000 now. But to turn it around, the victory there, which feels good. We lose revenue, but it feels good to be able to help the seller out, because in this case, she didn't have the money to cover that. We were going to pay her, I think, 8,000. Her judgment is like 15 something and some change. And she didn't have the funds to cover that. And obviously we could have just offered her like, hey, we could just pay off this judgment and get rid of this headache for you, but then she still makes no money. And so that's why we cut our profit down further, because we want her to make some money too. And so we gave her
Did you cut into
2,500
her proceeds too? Did you have her cover some of it from her proceeds or no?
No, we just, because at that point, like, she's making $0 or she's making negative $0.
I'm just saying, if she's making 8, you could say, can you cover a piece of this? Can you put 3 towards it and take 5 out of it, and we'll cover the rest?
Yeah, well, the judgment was double the contract price, so that wouldn't have worked in this case.
No, I'm just saying her net, if you reduce her net, not by the full judgment amount, but by a portion of it.
Yeah, well, essentially we did that. Yeah, we just the contract was just kind of invalid at that point, so we just gave her $2,500 net on top of the judgment amount.
That's what I meant. Yeah,
and all that stuff. Yeah, yeah. So because it was a judgment, it was a
she went from making 8 originally to making 2,500 herself, and a portion of her money went towards that judgment. Yeah.
Yeah, technically, yeah. So yeah, but so the victory of it is that she gets a judgment off her record, and they were compounding that at like $2 a day, which is not a lot, but it kind of adds up. And so that in like 6 months, it probably would have been a lot more. So that's why I tried to explain to her, and she was happy at the end of the day, because she's making some money off it. So that was the victory there, is that we still get to help her out. The judgment's off her record, this property's off her record, all the back taxes, there were like years of back taxes that we're paying off too. So bunch of stuff is coming off her plate, and she makes some money off it. So that's the victory. But the sting on our side is obviously, losing out on some revenue there. So there's that. And then another challenge this week was just having PPC continue to be a struggle for us. And so I think I delved into this last week, so I won't go too.
I thought you were going to cancel PPC.
Too heavy on that, but yeah, we're giving it till the end of April, and then we're going to cancel it. Like I think I shared last week, I reached out to the agency and I was like, these are our results. This is how much we spend with you. This is how much we made, which is 0. Like, what are you going to do about it? Can you please help us like improve our ads or do something? And following that, we got 2 contracts the following week, and one of them backed out immediately. So that was like the light for me at the end of the tunnel. I was like, oh my God, I expressed my concerns. We got 2 contracts immediately. And I told them, I was like, hey, these leads are great. Please keep sending us whatever type of thing you did to do these leads. But then one of them backed out immediately. And that was the one who was like ready to sell. We were going to close it this month and recoup some of that money. And she backed out. And so So the only reason I'm giving it one more month is because we got those two contracts last week, and the other one will hopefully close in May, and that'll be something. And then if we can get a few more this month, and at least it's something. But I probably will cancel the end of the month, so we'll see. I'll let everyone know what happens though.
I've got more direct mail data too that I looked up just to emphasize the contrast
Yeah, that's
from
probably
last.
that's
I was
probably
getting one contract out. Last campaign I did at the end of last year, I got one contract every 6 leads. I got 30 leads, 5 contracts, 2 closed so far from one direct mail campaign. So that's, you're getting 30 leads, 5 contracts, one every 6 leads gives you a contract
yeah,
there.
that's crazy.
And the ROI is like 7x already on that
Yeah,
campaign,
that's insane.
just for contrast.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's what I was
It
hoping
was the
for.
same with the last one I shared. It was one out of every 7 leads was a contract on our last one. I mean, I shared we got 15 contracts in March. 7 of those were from direct mail, from one direct mail campaign
That's amazing. Wow.
out of the 15. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the rate is right now is really good.
Yeah. That's
Knock on
crazy.
wood. Yeah.
Yeah, knock on wood. Well, you can't go worse because you've already made revenue from it, so you've already in the green. So that's great.
Yeah. I just hope that it continues as we do more campaigns,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
results.
That's amazing. So I think that's a
I'm just trying
testament.
to get you to come over from PPC to direct mail.
No, we're definitely planning on it. That's the plan. Unless something drastic happens this month, I told myself and the team, I was like, we have to get like at least 5 contracts this month from PPC to justify continuing it. So we'll see. Week one, we're at 0, so we'll see from
Good
PPC.
luck. Good luck. Good luck. I hope it works out.
Yeah, but yeah, we're most likely going to switch to direct mail. So I'm actually excited about that. But obviously, I would love to recoup my money, but you don't want to throw good money after bad, and I don't want to
Yeah.
keep continuing this experiment. It's not going to work. So that's
Yeah.
that. That's my challenges. On the victory side of things, we did close a few deals this week, which is great. And also we redid our whole bonus structure. I don't know if I shared this before, but Giselle, on one of our meetings in the last couple of weeks, she brought up that we should change up around our bonus structure, and I was totally open to it. And I just gave her that freedom to kind of run with it. And so she came back to me with a full like doc for every department, all these new like ideas for bonuses and stuff, and I loved it. And so we tweaked it a little bit together, but basically we just dove in and we figured the new quarter is a good time to roll it out. So we officially implemented it this week. And I think it's gonna be awesome. So the team is excited about it. We're doing I'll just share with you and anyone who's interested, but we just kind of switched around a format where in the past we were doing bonuses for every closed deal to everyone on the team regardless, just to kind of foster like a team environment, which we still want to do.
Yeah.
But we kind of switched that to where we want to foster a little bit more individual like success. And so that was her idea, at least to me, and I think it makes sense. Is that one of our people in particular was kind of, we feel like maybe might be slacking off because of that bonus structure, where everyone gets a bonus every time they close a deal. So like, oh well, I don't need to get any contracts because I'll just get a bonus either way. And so that's kind of why we changed it around. But basically, we're doing a little bit more incentive on the contract side of things for individuals. So based on department, every department has a different quota that they have to hit every month, and then they have goals every week. And so now we're having weekly contract goals, and based on how many contracts they get a tiered level of bonuses. And so one contract is a certain amount, and then 2 contracts is like more than double the first one, and then 3 is more than double that one. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like they want to shoot for the highest possible. And so this is our first week, and I think it's already working. So I'm excited about that. And then instead of doing bonuses on every closed deal like I shared, Giselle's going to get a bonus on every closed deal because she's the one closing them. She's the transaction coordinator, and then whoever gets that contract will get a bonus on every closed deal that they get a contract for. But people who didn't have any input or whatever on that contract won't get a bonus when the deal closes. But then every month we're now doing a monthly kind of closing pool, and so based on if we close this certain number, everyone gets this dollar amount. If we close a higher number, everyone gets a higher amount. And so we're doing that now. And I think it helps everyone strive for closed deals. Instead of doing a monthly contract bonus, we're now doing weekly contracts and monthly closed deals. So the focus every month is close as many deals as possible. And if we close the highest tier right now, which is 16, so who knows, I've never closed 16, but if we close the highest tier, everyone gets $650. So it's a pretty big bonus. And so I think that's going to be a good incentive for everyone to strive for, and hopefully lead to more closings. So yeah, just
Yeah.
wanted
It's
to share
fun.
that.
That's fun. Yeah.
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 Um, yeah, and then on a weekly basis, they have a bunch more, like we wrote out a bunch of bonuses that weren't there before. So just like for our follow-up people, we call them revive leads, but based on a certain number of revive leads every week, there's higher and higher bonuses. So there's that. And then if they get contracts, then they get bonuses every week too. So yeah. And then we also have a new team goal for 5 contracts a week. So if we get 5 a week, then everyone gets a bonus because that's like our goal on a weekly basis. So yeah, but just wanted to share that. That was a victory for me. I'm excited about that. See how it works this first month, and we're probably gonna still tweak it and stuff. But
Yeah,
so far the feedback has been great, so I'm excited about that.
cool.
Yeah, and also I wanted to share with you, I started SEO this week, and I'm excited about that because I wish I would have done that a long time ago. And so I finally bit the bullet and I just dove in because it's a difficult thing to do because it's like you're not going to really see a ROI for a long time, and it's a lot of money to spend. But I don't know, man. Since I started posting on social media, I'm having a bunch of my friends reach out to me, and they're trying to like have me help them with their leads and stuff. And these guys are just getting leads for free, like online. And I'm just like, man, that sucks for me. And so I was like, I'm just gonna bite the bullet and do the SEO thing. And so hopefully it'll work, and we'll see in about 1 year from now. So
So where's the SEO pointing people to? Your Facebook?
to the website.
Okay.
And so
And
I
then
mean,
just to your website form stuff.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm sure you know like a lot more about SEO than I do, but it's like just like I did a few meetings, and this guy that I went with, he broke down all the keywords. So it's really cool. He uses a
Yeah.
website called Ahref. If anyone wants to check it out, it's ahref.com. You can go on there and you plug in whatever your city is, and it'll show you all the keywords that people are searching for in your city to sell their house. So it's really cool. And then you can it'll show you exactly what your website is ranking for. And so I think if people what my website was built for was Durham, because that's where I started. And so if people search sell my house fast Durham, I'm number 7. It's not terrible, but I'm not number 1.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so and so he showed me this cool calculator that he made, which is like if I'm number 7, I'm averaging 0.5 to 1 lead per month, which is accurate. But if I'm number 1, it was like 40 leads a month that you're getting for free, just people that are searching sell my house fast. And so I was like, wow. And so if I can get up to that in the next 12 months, that's completely worth the cost that I'm spending with this dude. So that's my hope for it, is that I'll start ranking organically number 1, or at least like the top 3. And then I'll start getting those organic clicks so that I can stop doing PPC if I'm still doing it at that point. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that'd be great.
that's the goal. So
Yeah, it's much better than paying a PPC company.
yeah. And once you're up there, I think you're kind of up there. So I don't know what the upkeep is like, but I think once you start ranking up there, that you kind of just stay there for a while. So
Then Google likes you because people are going there and getting what they want, so they keep you up there. Yeah.
yeah. And I know like for me personally, when I search for something, I kind of skip through those top 3 ones that are ads, and I kind of just go to the first one that's not an ad. You know what I mean? And so
That's what I do too. Yeah.
I feel like that's probably what sellers do too. And so I realized, I was like, wait a second. That's what I do personally. So it's probably what other people do. So anyways, but yeah, I'm excited about that. So I'll hopefully report back in like 6 to 9 months and let everyone know how it's working. We'll see. But
Awesome.
overall, I think it'll be good too because he's just improving my website along the way. Like he's going to be adding more content and more pictures and just improving the website overall. And so, that's kind of like your digital business card these days. So hopefully
Yeah.
that'll help us too with credibility, I think. So, um, but yeah, that's pretty much it. So usually we like to wrap up with questions and comments. I don't think we have any this week. So if you guys want us to touch on anything in the future, if you have any questions, feel free to drop it here or on any of our other episodes. And I guess we'll just wrap it up with quotes, or if you have a book or podcast or anything you want to share, anything that you want to share on that.
Yeah, I don't have any quotes at the ready. I have been listening to some Naval this week, which I mentioned last week too. I'm just on kind of a Naval kick, so but I don't have any quotable stuff right off the top. But I recommend to anybody listening to the Navalmanac. Naval Ravikant is the guy, and he's an Silicon Valley venture capitalist guy, but he's also a philosopher, and he's just got some really cool thinking about success. And uh, yeah, he did a tweet storm about how to get rich, how to make money, and then he's got the Navalmanac summarizes his thinking on business and philosophy of
Yeah.
life and stuff. It's really good stuff. So I recommend that. But I don't have any quote right now. I didn't write something down. Do you have anything?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Have you watched the most recent pod he did?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you'll love it. You got to listen to it. So I'll send it to you after this. But anyone who's interested, he was on Chris Williamson, who I really like. And I think the last pod that Naval did was like 8 years ago. So it was pretty cool to see him on a
I've been
podcast.
listening to him on Joe Rogan this week. He did a
Yeah,
Joe Rogan
that was the
episode.
last one he did, I think, and that was a while ago. So
Yeah,
yeah, so definitely check this one out. And anyone else who's interested, it's like 3.5 hours. I'm like halfway through it, but it's really good. So yeah, just a couple quotes that I took out from that. They're kind of philosophical, but I'll just share real quick. And also, I've been reading the book I just started called Principles by Ray Dalio. Really enjoying that one. So I know a lot of people recommend it, but I never got around to it. So I'm really enjoying
yeah.
that one this
He's
week.
one of the greatest financial guys of our time, other than
Yeah,
Warren Buffett and what's his name? Warren Buffett's sidekick,
yeah, Charlie Munger. Yeah.
Charlie, Charlie
Um,
Munger.
So yeah, I've really been enjoying that one. I'm only a few chapters in, but would recommend that to anyone. And I think it's very timely too, because anyone who's living in the United States, the markets have absolutely tanked in the last couple of weeks, and so this is a great time to read up on Warren Buffett, Ray Dalio, people like that, and make sure to be greedy when others are feel fearful. That's Warren Buffett's quote. So
Yeah,
make sure to look for opportunities in the stock market and in all markets, real estate market too. So a lot of people are going to be maybe flash selling, in the upcoming months, and that can leave opportunity for us. So yeah, but just the two quotes that I got from that podcast that I mentioned. Naval said, "Not wanting something is as good as having it." I really like that quote. So that's something to think about. And
yeah,
then he said, also he said, "The reason to win the game is to be free of it." I really like that quote. So but yeah,
yeah.
he's just a wealth of quotes and gems and stuff. So
He's a brilliant guy. Yeah,
yeah.
he's,
So yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. If anyone, like I said, if anyone wants us to touch on different topics next time, or if you have any questions about our disposition conversation today or anything, feel free to drop them in the comments here, or you can reach out to either one of us on social. And yeah, do you want to do any call outs to your stand store or social or anything like that before we finalize?
yeah. Everything's going to be in the description of this podcast. So Jasper's link tree and my website and whatever else, ways to reach us, that'll all be in the description here. So yeah,
Awesome.
you
Yeah,
want
check the
to,
description and
yeah,
leave us some comments for next time. And thanks for listening, everyone.
yeah. So long.